Today, I am excited to introduce Dr. Michelle Odette Green, who is a dynamic speaker, trainer, author, and coach. She is an elite brain health trainer and neuroencoding specialist. She empowers audiences to transform their thinking, elevate their well being, and unleash new possibilities. Her engaging style blends brain health principles, neuroscience based tools, mindset practices, and actionable strategies so people can think better, feel better, do better, and have better. She also equips her audiences to embrace possibility, purpose, and positive change. She is the author of Be Successful for Life. Elevate your thoughts, words, actions, and results. And contributing author to the Moral Compass. Has a doctorate degree in educational leadership and master's in organizational management and a bachelor in business management. Dr. Michelle, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you here. So, Dr. Michelle Odette, can you share with us about your journey and what led you to become a coach and focus on the brain?
Yes, I absolutely can. And first off, thank you for having me today. And please call me Michelle. I
Thank
leave
you.
doctor for the students. So when I have students, I have them call me Dr. Michelle. So we are friends. So call
Thank
me
you.
Michelle. Thank you so much. So, what led me to become a coach and get into brain health and all of the above? Many years ago, actually, I started working with youth. I was actually 20 years old. So
Oh,
that's where it
wow.
initially started. Back in the early 80s, I got a job working with the municipality and I worked with youth and I loved working with the youth. I found out quickly that I had an affinity for working for them and wanting to see them grow. And because of that, I started seeking more opportunities so that I could help more people. And I worked with an entity called the Manpower Department. And with the Manpower Department, we help people get jobs, help them go to school, and just help them to be better individuals. And this program was designed for disadvantaged individuals. And so, again, I love working with the population. I started seeking more and more responsibilities, started applying for other positions, was sought after to excel. People start seeking me out and say, you're good at this. And so they actually offered me opportunities. And the more I was able to help, the more I believed I needed to get into a higher position to serve people better and to also help people grow. And so let me just go back to my childhood real quick, and then I'm going to go back and
Thank
advance
you.
to up to now. So in my childhood, most of the kids, when they were having challenges, they would come to me. So I didn't recognize back then, that I was considered their little helper, their confidant, if you will, and the individual that gave them answers that helped them in their lives. And so when I traced it way back then, I was being a coach, right? And so fast forward, I sought more and more responsibility, and I became a center director for an urban job corps center. So at that time, we would bring in youth who had challenges with their mental health. And so I had a psychiatrist and a psychologist on staff, and their job was to prescribe medication. And I was really concerned about the medications because in the early 2000s, the black box warning came out on the medication that it causes suicidal ideations. And so I was concerned about that part with our youth. They were already disadvantaged coming into the program. And then now we're medicating them because what we're calling it is we're stabilizing their behavior, which is important, very important. So I wouldn't recommend anybody coming off their medication if they are on some type of medication. At that time, Dr. Daniel Amen also had what is known as a PBS special. You remember the PBS specials, which they still
Yes,
have them.
yes.
And he had a program called Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. And when I saw that, oh my God, it resonated with me so much. So I started following Dr. Daniel Amen. He is a double board certified psychiatrist, if you will. And his thing is do no harm. So his first defense to mental health is what can we do naturally to help individuals improve the health of their brain? And that caught my attention because I'm like, these young people, their brains are developing. We brought in individuals from the age of 16 through 24. For females, your brain fully develops at the age of around 25. For males, it is 28. And so I'm thinking these brains are still being developed. And if we are putting them on medication, we're training their brains to rely on the medication. So when I learned about how you can change your brain and it will change your life naturally, of course, I locked in. So I got his book. I purchased it for all my senior staff, and I said, we need to start working with our youth in a different way. And so that's what started me truly on brain health itself. And I've been on that track since the early 2000s when I learned of Dr. Daniel Amen. And so I've just been all things about the brain, improving the health of your brain. And then, moreover, I'll say this and then I'll turn it back over to you. I fell into a situation where I had a tragedy in my life and it affected my own brain. And I fell into a depression, a deep depression. And did go to therapy. I went to therapy with psychologists and psychiatrists, and they told me also of natural remedies. And of course, I had already been primed for that because I was following Dr. Daniel Amen. And until it happens to you, you can read the books and you can believe that it will work, in which it did with our kids. But when it happens to you personally and you have to use all of the same tools that you're teaching, then you understand it at a different level, at a core level. And so I fell into my own depression. And of course, they wanted to prescribe me the medication. And because I knew about the side effects of the medication, that's not what I really wanted. So I started doing the natural things, natural supplements, getting out, walking, getting in nature, really using the self talk to help me improve my thinking. Because, of course, our thinking governs how we feel and what we do. And so, the last point that I want to make about that, there was another psychiatrist, and we were in a group setting, and they did prescribe me sleeping pills because I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. So I was sleeping maybe 2 hours a
Wow.
day. And then I couldn't eat. I maybe would eat like one piece of chicken, if you will. And so I had lost all this weight really, really fast, couldn't sleep, didn't have so much brain fog. And I know why. At the same time, it was just becoming too much that I couldn't sleep. So they prescribed me the sleeping pills, and I even took those and I still couldn't sleep. So when I was in one of the sessions, the psychiatrist told me, when I told her what was happening, she said, what you need to do is get on your knees and pray. She said, this is apart from, sleeping pills or whatever. You need to pray. And I did. And then I found that through the exercising, through my nutrition, through the natural supplements, through prayer and meditation made the big difference. I found myself slowly coming out of the depression. And then, of course, I had family members, friends who wanted to see me do better. And so it helped me to also improve my health, and community is so important. So those few things really helped me. And as a result, I've just been on a mission to help people improve the health of their brain, because when your brain works right, your life works so much better. You're happier, you're healthier, and you're more financially richer, if you will. And when your brain doesn't work right, then you're sicker, you're sadder, you're poorer. You're poorer because you make poor decisions. And so, because I know that our brain is our command center, and that's what makes us function. And so, it's so important to take care of your brain. And so, I know I've said a lot
Love
with
it.
that. So that's what originally started me working with the youth and then having my own challenge and seeing the challenges of others. And it just really made me understand the importance of us taking care of our brain.
I
Yeah.
love it. Thank you for sharing because I really like the phrase you mentioned, poor because we make poor decisions when we don't have a brain health. So share with
Yes.
us about how brain health can lead to have a stronger resilience and more joy in life. Share,
Yes.
can you share more about that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I so love the fact that I now understand how neurochemicals work in our body. So I didn't understand that when I was going through my situation and in helping others. We are all born with a happiness set point, if you will. So we come into this world and our happiness really that set point, like the thermometer on your what do you your air can AC. I can't. I'm like, okay, what am I trying to say? I know what I'm trying to say. So we'll set our what do you call that? What do you call it? The gauge for you will set it at a certain set point, and then if the house becomes too hot, then if it's on the AC is on, then it'll bring it back up to the set point. And if you have it like now, it's kind of colder, and if you have it set at a higher degree, if your house becomes lower, then it's going to come back to that set point. I'm trying to get
Yes.
out the example without, I'm like, why can't I'm calling it a thermometer, but that's not what it's called. The thermostat,
Thermostat.
okay? You said
Okay.
the thermostat. I'm like, okay, what am I trying to say here? So the thermostat. And so we all have that set point. So it's based on genetics, it's based on our environment, and it's based on how we influence ourselves. And so, with that in mind, we have the ability to influence our happy chemicals by the thoughts that we think, the foods that we eat, the moves that we make. All of that matters in how our neurochemicals fluctuate within the body. And once we can understand that, then we can do something about it when our happiness set point goes below a particular point, if you will. So, another example with that would be so our happy chemicals go up and down. They're not always meant to stay up. So when you find yourself dipping down, it's like, okay, what can you do to change how you feel? So first, your focus. Where are you putting your focus? Is your focus on, say, a problem? Because if your focus is on a problem, you're more likely activating cortisol within your body. And cortisol is really not meant to be turned on all the time. It serves its purpose, but if you live in a stress, and so that's what happens with leaders. When we are stressed, cortisol is activated and it is actually causing us to be sick. And so, knowing that, you have to find ways to actually dial that down. And so, with the happy chemicals, with dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, all of those, when you know how to naturally activate those, then you can easily get yourself to a state to where you feel better. So gratitude is one thing that I focus on. So when I find those chemicals dipping, gratitude, again, going back to your focus, where you put your focus on, that's where the energy is going to flow and where you're putting your power. And then the language. What are you saying to yourself? What are you saying to yourself? Are you saying things that will activate the chemicals to make you feel better? Or are you saying things that will activate the chemicals to make you feel worse? Because words matter, the words that we speak, not just the thoughts that we think. The thoughts matter too, but the words, when we put them out there, once we put them out there, you can't take them back. So I also like to give people the analogy of if you're thinking a thought, and then you start producing tears, or if you're using words and you start producing tears, what happened within you? What was the internal activation that happened? You activated chemicals that produce the tears. And so just like that, you can realize, okay, my words and my thoughts are so powerful. I need to manage how I'm thinking and what I'm saying, because it's going to dictate how you feel, and how you feel is going to dictate what you do. My job, part of my coaching, I don't just do one-on-one, I do group coaching and training, and I coach from the stage, is to help people to think better, to feel better, so that they can do better, so that they can have better in their life. And so when we go back to how do you activate that resilience and how do you have more joy, it's really where you put your focus, the language that you're using, and then the moves that you're making. So really, joy has a physical, let me, instead of trying to get the ology in there, has a physical component to it. The physical component, and there's a study that has been done on this in the power poses. Are you familiar with
Oh,
that study?
yeah.
Yes, power poses make a big difference. They activate those feel good chemicals as well. And so if you're slumped down, slumped over, contracted, then you're actually producing negative neurochemicals. But if you're expansive, if you are expanding, standing up, have your head up high, you're activating those good chemicals as well. A good smile, like your beautiful smile, it activates all those good chemicals. So once you know the facts and once you know strategies, you can easily implement them to increase your joy level. And when you do it over and over and over, I like to add another little component to it. When you catch yourself, as an example, if your neurochemicals are going down for the worse, you're slipping down the frequency scale of getting, sad, angry, mad, all of those things. When you find yourself going down, then you look at, okay, what can I say to start bringing myself up that scale? What can I reach for to start bringing myself up? And then you do this little thing, and this is for the resilience piece of it. You catch yourself like, aha, I just caught myself. I just caught myself actually sliding down that scale, and you pat yourself on the back. I'm saying, yes, pat yourself on the back. You celebrate that you caught yourself, because awareness is everything. And once you become aware of what you're doing, you catch yourself, then you start building that muscle and that resilience so that you don't slide down that scale as much. But when you do start sliding, then you catch yourself, and it's going back to that aha, because that's a significant emotional event, if you will, when you catch yourself, and it's in the ahas where you can reframe and you can change things. And the more you do that, the more resilience you will build for joy and more happiness in your life. And so that is my answer, and I'm sticking to it.
I love it. Thank you so much,
You're
Michelle.
welcome.
So, working with leaders,
Yes.
what are those limiting beliefs that you identified, and how can they reward them to unlock possibilities?
Yes. Ooh, I love that question so much. So it's amazing to me what I have heard out there with leaders. It's like, you feel like that? A lot of leaders have what they call, and I used to hate saying it, imposter syndrome. I'm like, imposter syndrome, I'm like, if you can see yourself like I see you, and you're telling me you think that you're not good enough, you think somebody's going to find you out and tell you, like, oh, you really don't know what you're doing. I have found that a lot of leaders, they find that they are not as worthy of the positions that they're in, if you will, and they feel like they really are just, let me find the best way of saying it without sounding so negative. But they feel like if people really knew who they were, that they wouldn't be liked, that they would be looked down upon. And I'm like, are you serious? I had one lady recently, brilliant, br- brilliant lady. The things that she is doing and how she is leading the way for other women to come into their own knowingness, you wouldn't have never ever imagined that she was believing she was a fraud. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. So, more leaders than not, they feel like if someone really knew what was behind the curtain, they would be disappointed. So, how do they change that? So, I teach them, listen, you got to go back and stack up all those wins that you've had. You didn't get to this position because you did nothing. You got to that position because you applied yourself and you did things necessary to be able to serve at that particular level. And so I also like people to look at serving versus being attached to a title. Because when you find yourself being attached to a title, then if that title was taken away from you, then it's like you're feeling like you're unworthy, like, you're a failure, all of that. So I teach them, you're serving in a particular role at this time. And when it's time to move on to serve in a different role, you go serve in that particular role. So don't get caught up on a title. And so the other thing is going back to stacking your wins. You graduated high school. You didn't graduate high school, but you got your GED. You graduated college. You graduated, from these certification programs. You've done things to help other people. So you start stacking up your wins to see that, no, you actually deserve to be in that leadership role. You've helped other people be successful. And so I've seen that as a common limiting belief. And then what I tell people is, again, go back to even the smallest win. And when you celebrate that smallest win and you look at the things that you really even overcoming things, even if things were very, very hard and you pushed through and you overcame, you find out that you're more resilient than you thought you were. And that is a skill in and of itself. You find that your emotional intelligence is better than you thought it would be because you overcame that. So I again encourage leaders to, when they find themselves feeling unworthy, go back and call the roll. Create a brag book. Create a folder with all of the celebrations or the accolades that you've received and all the thank yous. People, when I served as the center director, even though it was a long time ago, and I get this now, but I'm just going back to when I first started doing this. So every thank you that I got, every card that I got, notes that I got from staff and from outside entities, I would put it in a book, in a folder, if you will. And whenever I started feeling down, I would open that up and I would read those thank you notes, and it would help boost my neurochemicals. At the time, I didn't know that's what I was doing. Yeah. But now that I have a word for it, I can say, oh, that was me activating those positive neurochemicals when I was feeling down. And so I think I answered your question.
Yes, I love it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And actually, we face many challenges in life, and it can be overwhelming. How leaders can help their teams to boost collaboration towards meaningful results in the middle of all those challenges?
Oh, I love that. So I recently did some leadership training with a company, and it was all centered around collaboration. Really collaborating. How do you collaborate with your team to be more effective, and how do you train your team to collaborate with others to be more effective? And the first thing is, so many people want to compete with one another, and that is a thief. Competing and comparing yourself to other people for the purposes of being better than them, it actually robs you of your joy. So my thing is, when you compare yourself to someone, it's only for possibilities and inspiration. And so within the team, what I teach is, for instance, when they start their meetings off, to start off with wins. What did we do great as a team? Start off with wins, do celebrations. And it's so important if you start meetings, for instance, on a high note. And one way to do that is with wins. So we're celebrating each other, we're celebrating as a team. So starting out with those wins. And then you can start in on strategies on how we can improve. What can we do better as a team to work collaborative? Because when one person is trying to do it all and don't have the help of the team, that's where burnout comes. So if we're working together as a team, then we can all rise together as a team and celebrate as a team. And there's no resentment in that. But I've worked with teams, as an example, and I felt like I was carrying the load. And what happened? I felt resentful. I resented the fact that you guys are doing nothing, and here I am doing all the work. And so, from a person who has experience working, quote unquote, in a team, and I'm carrying the load, that doesn't feel good. So, then again, going back to how do you not let that happen? One other way is you actually give assignments to people where they are strong. So you let them take on the task that you know that they can complete. Now there's nothing wrong with them taking on tasks that they need to learn how to perform. But if you're doing, say, like a big project, don't give somebody something that you know that they cannot do because you're setting them up for failure. And you don't want to do that as a leader. You want to play to their strengths and train them for their weaknesses. When I serve, I've been out of the corporate world for years now. And when I did serve as the center director, I always trained a couple of leaders to come behind me. Because here's the thing, you never know when you're going to leave. You never know if you will get ill and you have to be out for several months. You never know what's going to happen in life. So you, as an effective leader, you want someone who can come behind you and take on the role in your absence. And my thing has always been, when I did that and I trained, had that succession plan in action, because that's really what it is. And when I train others to be leaders, my thing was, I'm going to be okay either way. If they need to take my position, I'm okay because I'm just going to go to better.
Exactly,
I'm not,
exactly.
it's okay. And, when people see you training others to be successful, what is not taught is actually caught through mirror neurons. So they're seeing you be happy. They're seeing you celebrate each other. They're seeing you showing other people how to, not just you're telling them, but you're teaching them as well. That actually has a ripple effect. And so being more collaborative, all of those things are important to, number one, to lead with purpose. And then number two, to teach other people how to lead with purpose and be intentional about it. And so that's my short answer.
Well, I love
I
it.
can
Thank
give
you.
you more, but that's the short answer.
Thank you so much. Leaders create leaders.
That's right.
Yes. And
Absolutely.
can you share with us why did you choose a doctorate on education leadership?
Absolutely. So my undergrad is business, all business. So let me go back to, I got married very young, right? So I just knew, I was like, I'm going to be a mother. And I got married right out of high school. But I still knew that I wanted to pursue higher education. But being a wife and then having my children, I'm like, okay, how do I do this? So I took just the untraditional way with education, right?
Ooh.
So I started out with an AA. So I got an AA in business administration and then business management. Then I went on to pursue my bachelor's in business management. And then I didn't like math, all right? So I'm like, oh, I do not like math. And so I didn't want to do the MBA because of all that accounting and all that math. I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. So I went the organizational route. So I got my master's in organizational management. And so as I was serving as the center director for Job Corps, I had two men, they thought, oh, you need to pursue your doctorate degree. And I'm like, really? They're like the company I was working for pushing the company to pay for my doctorate degree. They kept saying, you need to put her in school, you need to pay for her doctorate degree. And so being in education, because Job Corps, we had a high school
Yeah.
there, we taught careers, if you will. Let me just put it that way
Pathways.
instead of
Uh-huh.
they used to call it vocational education, and then we switched to career pathways, if you will. That's a better way of saying that. And so I thought, you know what? I'm in the educational industry, if you will. So educational leadership sounds good to me. So I decided to pursue educational leadership. And the great news is the company paid for the majority of my doctorate degree.
Amazing.
So because of those young men, I'm calling them young men, actually, they weren't that young, but it's Saul Blinky. God rest his soul, a Jewish man, he just fell in love with me and he just thought I walked on water. And he would always tell me, if you feel like you're sinking, just reach out and call for help. But he really encouraged me. And then another lady, her name is Audrey Holmes. She encouraged me as well. And so, and last but not least, I can't leave out my mother. Oh, my mother, who is just a wonderful inspiration to me. She's 86 years young, serving on city council, and she's always encouraged me to do my best to pursue higher education and just be the best person or human being that I can be. And so those are people who inspired me, and that's what made me pursue educational leadership for my doctorate degree.
Oh, thank you for sharing about those mentors. And can you
Yes.
share more about community and how is that impacting our brains too?
Absolutely. So I'm involved in so many different communities because it's so important, the social aspect of who you hang around and the fact that, we need that support. We really, really need that support. So I am an elite brain health trainer and we have our own community as brain health trainers. And then I serve as a neural encoding specialist and we have our own community. And so with those two communities, that I'm really tied to. I have others that I participate in, but I'm really tied to those two communities. We focus on our biological aspect, our mental, if you will, our social connections, and then also bio, psycho, social,
Yeah, all
spiritual
connected.
in our spiritual connection. And so the social piece of it also, we are wired for social interaction. And when we have those good, nourishing relationships, they activate the chemical oxytocin in us. And so that oxytocin is something that we need. Again, that's that bonding chemical. And so community helps us bond to one another. We met, quote unquote, in a community, right?
Yeah.
Being John Maxwell leadership coaches, trainers, and speakers. And so just community to me is so important. And I love community because when I have a challenge, I can go to someone in the community and they can help me. And so I love it, love it, love it. And the last thing I want to say about community, this is kind of away from the path of what I was talking about, but this is an example of why it's so important. So I used to do marathons. I started doing marathons, loved doing marathons. And so I decided to do my first full marathon. I started out with just the small half marathons. And so the first full one, I got to the 16th mile and I started struggling. I started struggling big time. My legs were giving out. I was beating my legs. The circulation didn't seem like it wanted to circulate, if you will. I was having a time. But I had people who kept coming beside me, just encouraging me to keep going, keep going, keep going.
Wow.
And it kept me moving. But when I got almost to the finish line, maybe say the 23rd mile, again, I start struggling again. The fatigue just set in. And again, self talk. What was I saying to myself? Why did I do this? Why did I do this? Never thought back then to encourage myself. But a man came along and he encouraged me. He said, I'm going to stick with you until we make it to the finish line. So he was my brain at that time because at that point I was so fatigued that, I wanted to stop, but because of
The
community,
support.
the support, he kept pushing me to go further. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. And I kept going, and we both crossed the finish line with our
Wow.
arms raised. And so community is so important because that those are your cheerleaders. They keep you going. They help you get to the finish line. And so that's why I believe community is so important.
Yes,
Yes.
we need to ensure we have the right we build a
Yes.
community around us.
Exactly. Exactly. And when you just said having like the right people around you, if you find that you don't, then you just,
Move.
quietly exit. I recommend just
Yeah,
uninvite yourself to the community quietly. Yes,
exactly.
exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
And can you share with the audience what unleash leadership means to you?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Unleash your leadership. What that means to me. Well, first, I want to break it down because when you think of the word unleash, that means that something must be tied up, right? Chained up. And so you want to unleash that leadership. So I think it starts internally. The internal perspective that I choose is that number one, you have to take 100% responsibility for who you are. I participated in a book called The Moral Compass. And in my chapter, I was the co author, if you will. In my chapter, I actually said, if a person followed you around all day long, what would they see? So you think about it. If they were a fly on the wall, what will they see when they're following you around all day long? And so whatever they see, when I go back to saying taking 100% responsibility for your life, for your happiness, for your leadership, what they will see is how you govern yourself. What are the core values that you live by? Do you have integrity? Are you trustworthy? So when I think about unleashing the leadership within, I'm looking at how are you governing your life? Are you someone that someone really wants to attach to because you can take them to higher heights and do it in a way that's authentic and that you are demonstrating integrity? Because you don't want to get with a bad leader, because believe it or not, you have people that people believe that are leaders, but they're really not integrous. So unleashing the leadership within for me is being authentic, having integrity, taking 100% responsibility for your life and grow other people. So not just a leader, you got to have followers, right? And so, not just calling yourself a leader, a true leader wants to see other people excel and be the best that they can be. So, unleashing the leadership within really is being a leader for yourself first, taking that responsibility and then growing other leaders. And then you can truly call yourself an effective leader. And so that is my answer, and I'm sticking to it, as Les Brown would say.
Thank you so much.
You are so welcome.
Well, so I will say, what is the legacy that you are creating in the planet? Dr. Michelle Odette, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the wisdom you share, for the great inspiration, all the
Yes.
tips for the emerging leaders. We are looking forward to having you soon again.
Thank you so much. And I would love to come back and tell more tips and tricks on how you can be more effective as a leader.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.